Everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by SoundCraft Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Me and Molson's Missing, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook, coming soon, Missing 2 by Me and Molson's available on Amazon, coming soon, double suspense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also by the Sweet Psalms by Serena Wagner, based on the life of King David, with 30 exquisite paintings, King David, Psalms, and more, chronicling the life of King David, available on Amazon. Keyword, Sweet Psalms, Serena Wagner. We're here with the amazing author with 20 years experience working with the International Development Organization and served as the leading economist at World Bank Division Chief Education at Inter-American Bank, co-director of Center of Universal Education at Brookings Institute, and currently a professor of practice at Harvard Graduate School of Education, living in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Talk more about that. Has a brand new book providing a practical and encouraging guide for everyone, regardless of age. It can be from 0 up to 100 and beyond 120. If we get 125, that'd be great. Who wants to make a positive change through their professional life, which is basically ensuring access to by quality schools, clean water, and also just the safer communities, and just highlighting some of the features. The book is called Let's Change the World, How to Work Within International Development Organizations to Make a Difference. Live, ladies and gentlemen, Plus Studios in beautiful downtown Cambridge, Massachusetts, the amazing author with 20 years experience working in international development organizations, and the currently a professor at Harvard Graduate School of Education, with the book Let's Change the World. Ladies and gentlemen, change the world, multi-talented Emiliana Vegas. Emiliana, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Mike. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, it's great to have you on board, Emiliana. You're here to make a difference, and we're letting you do that. You're an author with 20 years experience working in international development organizations. You served as the leading economist at World Bank Division Chief of Education at Inter-American Bank, co-director of the Center for Universal Education at Brookings Institute. You're currently a professor of practice at Harvard Graduate School of Education, living in Cambridge, Massachusetts. You have a new book providing a practical, encouraging guide for everyone, regardless of age, who wants to make a positive change through the professional life, ensuring access to quality schools, clean water, safer communities, and more. The book is called Let's Change the World, How to Work Within International Development Organizations to Make a Difference. Before getting on, Emiliana, tell us how I first got started.
So I started as a professor at Harvard after, as you said, a long career in international development organizations. And I realized that a lot of my students, most of whom want to make a difference in the world, didn't know about the world of international development and didn't quite understand what institutions like the World Bank do and how they can, through these institutions, make a difference. And so I was inspired by one of my friends who's a career younger than me, who told me, you're now at Harvard, you can do whatever you want. Why don't you put together a book and help us out?
So I should have thought that long time ago. Go to Harvard, do whatever you want. I made a bad career move.
Well, at least I have academic independence. I don't have to, go through any clearances to write my ideas. That's the beauty of being in universities in a free world.
Mm-hmm. And that certainly sounds like it. And what was that one precise moment that simply influenced you into what you do in the rest of your career?
I would say there were a few. I was privileged in some ways. I was born in a low-income country in Caracas, Venezuela, in South America. But I was privileged in the sense that my parents really valued education and wanted all their children to have the opportunity to go to some of the best schools in the US, primarily to learn English and to get a strong education. So I came very young to the US when I was 12, going on 13. For high school.
Oh,
And I
wow.
graduated from high school here in the US. But then I went back home. I missed my home a lot. And I went back for college. And it was there that I realized that my parents had a vision that really there were probably not very good schools in my country. I was in one of the more competitive universities, one of the more competitive programs. with some of the brightest people from all over the country. And I frankly didn't have to be working so hard as I had in high school. And I excelled very easily. I sort of cruised through college, if you wish.
Hmm.
And it's sort of at a very early age, I realized that part of the probably reason why Venezuela had not advanced economically and socially was because it didn't have a good education system.
Hmm.
And
Now,
so
was this?
I,
Oh,
yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Was this going on for quite some time, or was it before a new regime took over?
Oh, this had been going on for quite some time. I was born in the late 60s, and I grew up in the 70s and 80s, which were some of the better times for my country when we had a lot of foreign investment in our oil industry. The government ran a very professionally run oil industry. And the people really were better off than certainly they are now in terms of having a democracy and having opportunities, but it was quite unequal. So there was a lot of differences between the haves and have-nots, which led to sort of, I think, the sort of populist regime initially led by Hugo Chavez, and today what we have is basically a dictatorship. But I have been out of my country now since the early 90s. I came back for grad school to study public policy because I felt that if I were to influence policy decisions, maybe I could make a difference.
Hmm.
And
And what? Oh,
yeah,
go
go
ahead. I'm
ahead.
sorry. No, go
And
ahead. I'm sorry.
it was during my time that I was at Duke University doing a master's in public policy that I first encountered the world of international development through a summer internship. I really, because I grew up at a time when Venezuela was a fairly well-off economy, you didn't see around organizations like the World Bank or the Inter-American Development Bank or USAID in the territory, or they were probably there, but they weren't very visible with projects in the way that they are in poor nations. And so it was during that summer that I started working with an economist at Research Triangle Institute that I learned about these projects that USAID and the World Bank fund in low and middle income countries to help improve lives, to help reduce poverty and promote economic growth.
Hmm. Now, the thing with Venezuela going from a prosperous country over to a dictatorship. What year or what period that happened, and why the change from your perspective?
So it happened gradually. In the sort of mid 90s, there was a popularly elected Democratic president who had been president in the 70s and who recruited a bunch of very highly skilled cabinet members, secretaries of economy, et cetera. And at the time, the sort of best knowledge was that you needed to balance your budget so that shouldn't be in so much debt, that you should really not have so many subsidies and be a competitive economy. And so these economists, very well intentioned, I believe, tried to do that. And one of the big measures that had to be undertaken was to raise the price of gas in the gas pumps because Venezuelans were paying less than a penny per tank of
A
gas,
penny? Seriously? Oh my gosh! I think
something
you're
like
about
that.
to start a riot.
And exactly, and so they the idea was to gradually raise the prices of gas, so at least the government wasn't losing so much money in terms of what it cost to produce it and get the gas to the pump stations. And then, but people revolted. Exactly, that's what happened. And that sort of the president lost all sort of trust in the people, and we had a coup attempt by a now famous guy named Hugo Chavez, who didn't succeed at that time, but he promised to come back. And then the following election, the democratically elected president pardoned him. And then he actually ran through with a party as a communist leader and won the popular vote. And slowly over many years, starting in 1998, when he first won democratically elected, he started doing things like passing laws that took away rights, you know, passing a new constitution, which took away powers from the legislature and the judicial system and centralized it more in the presidency. And over, you see it, and in hindsight, you could have seen as more and more rights were being taken away, but they don't happen overnight. It's a process, and autocrats are known to do this. And today, what we have is Chavez's appointed successor, Nicolás Maduro, running a very authoritarian regime. We just had elections that were not by any means free or fair, but still the opposition were organized enough to have all the ballots counted and taken out of the country, and have proven that they won. And we have an elected president with over 90% of
Oh my goodness.
citizens voting for him, and the regime has not acknowledged that they lost yet, and they're not. And so we're actually in a very critical moment as a country, because the official inauguration date, just like in the U.S., it's January 20th. For us, it's January 10th, so in 2 days. And
Oh wow.
Maduro,
Okay.
yeah, Maduro has not accepted that he will leave office, but the people want to change. And so we'll see what happens. Tomorrow, there's a big march been called upon by the opposition leader, and the elected president has been going around, including meeting with the President Biden here, and Representative Mike Johnson, and a bunch of leaders from both, the outgoing party and governing party, and the incoming governing party, and has garnered the support of most countries, most democratic countries in Latin America, in Europe, and in the US. So
Hmm.
we'll see.
hmm and of course, another thing too with the education, you talked about the equality of education, being downhill and everything. How do you compare the education and what is lacking in Venezuela compared to the education in the U.S.?
So back when I was, in a school age time, it was quite different, but still the country had a functioning, let's say, education system. So I wouldn't say it was competitive or really high quality, but schools operated, teachers attended, there were salaries that were provided a decent living for teachers who were civil servants. More similar to the US than now, when in part because of this regime that has destroyed the economy, and all sorts of resource generation and revenue, even for the government. Teachers are way underpaid, and so they have decided not to show up at school because they're not paid for it, and the government has basically sanctioned that and said, schools can open when they want. And so
Oh
today, our
wow.
children in Venezuela go to school maybe, if they're lucky, 2 or 3 times a week for half a day. And so very, very different. And the impact of that sort of what we call in the sector, sort of the impact of learning losses, translates into, later lower employment rates, lower wages, lower economic growth for the entire society. So we can see that the country is really at an inflection point where we don't have a change. We're going to continue in this downward spiral. Speaking of the US has also a lot of problems in education and a lot of inequality, but it has a lot of innovation and differences between states and districts, and a lot, of course, more resources to invest. And I think even though also the pandemic was, catastrophic for the US, and we're seeing loss in learning as well, and a growth in achievement gaps between rich and poor, between minority and majority populations, etc. We do see sort of, first of all, there's data, and so there's analysis, and there's light on the problem, which is first step. And second, there's a lot of now knowledge on what to do about it. So we have evidence of what works to accelerate learning when there's been learning loss. And I think a lot of systems are working hard to get students back on track, but there's still big impact worldwide of what was essentially 1 or 2 years of school closures for many,
Hmm.
many children.
And also, when it comes to the schools as well, too, what percentage would you say that Venezuelan government has invested into the schools? Because here in the U.S., they pour about like what 50, 60, almost like 70% just pouring all the money in education. And so, some critics say that it's still subpar. What percentage would you say that the Venezuelan government is pouring into education? About what, a rough ballpark figure percentage wise?
I mean, the tragedy is that it used to be around 4.5% of the GDP, the gross domestic product, or the entire wealth that the country produced. Today is much less. I'd say closer to 1%. We don't really have reliable data. but we do know that the schools are in a state of complete disrepair. The infrastructure, like I say, teachers earn maybe $20 a month, which is not enough to
Oh
live
my
even there.
goodness, 20 a
Yes,
month? And
yeah, it's
what
just
was that translating to US dollars?
I'm saying in dollars. So in
Oh,
Venezuelan
it is
currency,
dollars.
we don't,
Okay. I
yeah,
thought
it's
Venezuela
dollars,
had a
but
different monetary system. Okay.
it does. But because of the hyperinflation we've had, we don't even count our own currency anymore because it doesn't mean anything. It can change day to day. So the complete economy is dollarized, but the salaries are not. The
Oh
costs of
wow.
living are. So it's tragic.
Oh my gosh. And change does have to be made. And I see why you want to change the world. We'll find more about that with Emiliana Vegas. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com. It's powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking a budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today 1 800 303 3960. That's 1 800 303 3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, time to give an official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon, paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those who love it first go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews. And Eve 11 endorsed by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassie, Forrest Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today for it goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Coming soon, Missing 2 by Mia Molson-Zia, coming soon to Amazon. Double the suspense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also, Mike Wagner shows brought to you by Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of King David, including 30 exquisite paintings, King David's Psalms. Sweet Psalms gives a new perspective of David through the Psalms he wrote as a time as a shepherd and complicated yet turbulent relationship with King Saul. It's a story of love, hope, repentance, betrayal, and more. Check it out, Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Psalmist, Serena Wagner. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com. 40 podcast platforms, heard in 100 countries. Take us with you on any mobile device. Make sure you subscribe to us and follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Spreaker, iHeart, and more. For great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com. Be sure to check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast, t-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies. Makes great gifts 24/7. Go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia for great books like Missing, Once, and Wrinkles, cool merchandise, and more. And be sure to support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. We're here with the amazing author with 20 years experience working in international development. And the book is called Let's Change the World, How to Work Within International Development Organizations to Make a Difference on the Mike Wagner Show. Your new book provides a practical, encouraging guide for everyone to follow wants to make a positive change, irregardless of age. And tell us more about the book and what inspired you to write it.
Well, the book is really about trying to shed light on this world that I called of international development organizations, institutions like the United Nations, the World Bank, many regional development banks, but also private philanthropies, advising organizations to these institutions, so that young people who want to improve the lives of people around the world have an opportunity to know what are the skills they need, how do these organizations actually work on the ground, and how do I use them as a platform to make this difference. And so that was sort of my goal. I was lucky enough to enter one of these institutions fairly young, right after I finished my own graduate school at Harvard, where I now teach.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't sure what I was doing, but I was learning a lot. I was having a lot of access to work with governments around the world to improve their education systems. And I learned that even someone like me who had been trained more as a researcher could apply those skills to inform decision makers, to really give them evidence to make better decisions, evidence from what had worked in other parts of the world, evidence from their own data, and programs that they were implementing. And so it's a very exciting, I think, field. You can really get close to real world problems that are hard to tackle. So you're kind of always working out your brain. These are very complex problems. You're always working with others because no one has all the right answers. And the idea of these institutions often is to bring different experts together. So I'm trained primarily like an economist of education. So I come from that perspective, but I'd work with anthropologists, with sociologists, with financial management specialists, with procurement specialists, with people who knew how to make things happen, people who have like a public administration or a business administration degree. And so in these teams, you really try to bring the best out of everyone to improve lives, really.
And what are some of the projects that you guys have taken on? Maybe a couple of highlights on some of the major projects that you have taken on that have really made big impact.
So for me, I guess two of the more exciting ones. I worked, I should say, most of my career in Latin America and the Caribbean. And early in my career, I was at the World Bank at the time, and we received a call from the government of Chile requesting help because then President Michelle Bachelet had announced the creation of a new superintendency of education. That was the title. It was meant to be an institution that would sit alongside the Ministry of Education and help schools use public resources in a more effective way to produce learning. But they weren't sure how would that work along the ministry. How did other systems that had similar institutions, what did they do? How do they staff them? All that. And so it was a time when I didn't really have the skills to figure this out, but I did have the network. So one of the things I tell in my book is how important it is to build and nurture networks of experts who you can go to and use these institutions, because when you are fairly young, but you sit in an organization like the UN or the World Bank and you call a former minister, they're likely to pick up their phone and say, yes, I'm willing to work with you and help you and give you advice or give you guidance. And so that's essentially what I did. We ended up producing a report alongside the Chileans. So a lot of consultations with all the stakeholders in Chile, a lot of bringing outside expertise. And that sort of report that looked at how other countries ensured quality through their institutions at the central government level ended up being an important law that the parliament in Chile passed, and that today, maybe 15 years later, is operating and has managed to improve learning outcomes and reduce learning gaps for students in Chile, which I'm, very proud of. It was sort of first time that I felt like, wow, I can see my work turning into a law that then becomes actually, that I see now the people who are directing these institutions that didn't exist before and what they're doing. Another exciting project that I was involved in was early on in Brazil. Right after the government had passed for the first time, they declared that secondary education was mandatory for all students, and they didn't have enough secondary schools. These are high schools, right? They didn't have high schools all over the country. It's a very large country, like the US, in terms of territorial extension, millions and millions of people. And they have students in very remote and rural areas. Imagine in the Amazon forest, where in order to protect the forest for the rest of us, they haven't built adequate roads or anything. So a lot of the students live in very small villages that are only connected via rivers. How do you get to them quality secondary education? And so one of the things that the Amazonas state developed, and then they sought the help of the Inter-American Development Bank. By then I was chief of their education division, was to develop in the capital of the state a sort of, imagine a TV studio, and they would recruit the best teachers they could to teach specific subjects like, high school science or high school history.
Okay, so it's like a cable network pretty much.
Right, and they would connect.
We have that
in the
US as well, especially with my kids in a small area. It's like my son was in art class. There was just 5 students throughout the state of North Dakota, one way up northwest by Canada, one over by Grand Forks, Minnesota, down by Wyoming. It's like, and they still learn great.
Exactly. And so all that requires is really the digital infrastructure, right? And some spaces for the students to gather in these remote villages, and maybe a facilitator. So they have a local teacher, maybe a primary school teacher, who can make sure that the students, are following the instructions of the teacher, who's in live participating via satellite TV. And so, yeah, and that was something we ended up funding its expansion both in Amazonas state and then in Pará state. And now I learned that even Sao Paulo, one of the wealthiest states, also has some issues with smaller and more rural areas, and has they called it centro medias to provide remote high quality education as well. So
you also hit upon some others as too. We hit ensuring access, quality schools, clean water, and also safer communities. What are some other things that you've also worked to strive as well?
So in the world of international development, you can work on anything. You can work on roads and infrastructure and electricity and technology, everything. My particular area of expertise has been early childhood through secondary education. I've worked a little bit in higher education, but I've always focused on really this idea that that people really, in order to thrive, need to have a sound and a high quality education, because that's what allows you to make important decisions with information. That's what allows you to get good jobs. That's what allows you to, choose who you marry in a way that makes sense and that is good for you. So lots
That
of
would
things
be
depend
nice.
on your
Yeah.
education. Yeah. Yeah, actually, there's a lot of evidence that shows that people who are more educated tend to, I'm the exception, tend to get divorced less. I am divorced and remarried, but they tend to, make better decisions overall in their lives. And so, sometimes I still think it was a good decision for me to get divorced, but I wish it hadn't happened, of course.
Right, exactly. And of course, there's also three parts be involved in the journey as well, too. We'll talk more about that. Emiliana Vegas with the book Let's Change the World. You listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by SoundCloud Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Missing. Also, the Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of King David, available on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner. We'll be back with author Emiliana Vegas of Let's Change the World after this time out. We're back with author Emiliana Vegas on the Mike Wagner Show with Let's Change the World, how to work within international development organizations to make a difference. You made a difference so far, Emiliana, and this breaks down to three parts as well, too. And it's how you get in, how you thrive, and how to make a real difference.
Yeah, so I see the book as a way of, sharing with people, like you said, of all ages, but especially those who are maybe still getting their college degree or their graduate degree, or who are starting a career and are not completely fulfilled, to try and give them insights into what skills do you need to get in? How do you actually navigate the process of the different positions that there are and entry points at different stages of your career? And then the second part is, once you're in, how do you thrive? How do you climb the corporate ladder? How do you lead teams? How do you, network? And then finally, which is, in the end, the ultimate goal of the book is not just that you get in and that you thrive as an individual, but that you have impact in the world. And so the third part is really how to not lose perspective, because as I mentioned in the book, these institutions, because they tend to be global or multi-country, or even when they are bilateral, like the U.S. Agency for International Development, they want to attract the best talent, and in order to do that, they have quite attractive compensation packages. Let's put it that way. So they have good salaries, they have good benefits, they have good working conditions. It's an exciting job anyway, because you're working to solve complex problems all over the world. You're traveling. It's extremely adrenaline producing. And so some people, I think, after you go in with the right intentions, but over time you start seeing some of the challenges. They're not perfect. They're bureaucratic. There's a lot of things you have to do.
Autocratic, and you got plain old drama.
Yeah, like in every large organization or maybe even small organizations, but in particular in these organizations, because they are primarily funded by taxpayers, there's a lot of accountability mechanisms in order to ensure that you can report back to your taxpayers, to your constituencies, right? And so if you want to get things done fast, for example, you might get frustrated because there's timelines and there's processes and this and that. So that, is just part of the game. Like, you have to realize, well, if I want to have an impact, I need to build in the time that it requires to do this well with the systems that the institution imposes on me. And some people get frustrated, and then they and others focus only on the processes and lose sight of why you're doing all that. And so they're only internally focused, and they think, oh, if I just do what the institution requires me to do, I'll succeed, I'll advance. But they care less about the ultimate impact. And so I try to really give insights into how do you kind of keep your foot, your I guess your eyes on the ball, and your heart in the right place in spite of all the distractions, because there are a lot of distractions. And I feel like one of the reasons I was able to do that was that I was never fully wedded to staying in these institutions. I always wanted to have impact. Where I did it from was less important to me. And so for me, once I realized I'm not able to do the kind of work I want to do anymore here, I moved. And a lot of people are afraid of that because you might lose some benefits or you might lose job security. And so my message is, you actually, if you focus on the right things, you'll actually be more attractive to others, and you'll get even better opportunities, whether it's in the same institution or in another one. And that certainly was my experience.
And it sounds to me, it kind of breaks down time management, project management, and forest for the trees.
Correct. Yes.
I
Yeah,
heard
I
that
would say
I
that's
heard
it.
that phrase a lot. There's a lot of people, of course, involving time management. Then there's also degrees in project management. I mean, back in days, it's like project management, to-do list. Da, 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 da. Now it's just like, yeah, complex processes like you did. And of course, some people just look at the tree, but they don't see the whole forest.
Right. And one of the things I learned early on is that actually other people are overwhelmed by the amount of things you have to do in order to get something done. And I realized early on when I managed my first real project, which was a combination of studies on teacher incentives in Latin America, that the fact that I had managed to produce what I promised to do in the time period I promised to do it within the budget made me really attractive to give other interesting projects for, because it was a rare thing, which I didn't know at the time. It was rare that someone actually said in their proposal, within a year, you're going to get this product, whether it's a project approved by the board of the bank or a report or something. And it's going to happen within these, series of steps and within this budget time. And it's a skill, like you say, you have to manage it well, but it's also, they don't, I always felt like I had enough resources to do the work that I needed to do. And when I didn't, I could ask, and really, as long as I had a good argument, these institutions are generally well funded, particularly the ones in which I worked, which are, as I call, global funders. They are funded in order to give grants and loans to countries. So there's always resources there. Others have less resources when you're on the other side, where you have to actually access those resources in order to implement programs or do the work. So I'm not generalizing, but at least in the ones I worked, it was very, I think, when you were able to produce something that you had committed to in time and within budget, it's something that sets you up for success later on.
Oh my gosh, and that's amazing. Just like a blueprint for success. And where can we find your book, Amelia?
Anywhere where you buy books, particularly online, it's available on Amazon or Tertullian, Barnes and Noble, and bookshop.org, but also in many local bookstores. I doubt it out there in North Dakota, but
Well, you know
certainly in New
something,
York and
you never know. We do have some good bookstores up where we're at, and of course, you can find them at universities like at North Dakota State, University of North Dakota, even the small ones like University of Mary, Bismarck State, or Dickinson State, Wilson State, or anything like that, or even going down to the Black Hills. So small colleges are willing to carry those as well, too. Not just the big ones, but small ones work as well, too. So we'll find that. We're here with the amazing author Emiliana Vegas of Let's Change the World: How to Work Within International Development Organizations, Make a Difference on the Mike Wagner Show. Just a few more things, Emiliana. What else are we expecting 2025 and beyond?
Well, I'm excited to travel more. I've already done a few rounds presenting the book to students and young people in New York, in Boston, and Paris, and Washington, D.C. And I'm hoping to be in Boulder, Colorado, and in California, and London. And so hopefully get the word out more. And like you said, get universities to put it in their libraries. And hoping that this year, more and more people will be I would say, sharing their talents to improve the lives of others. I think that's a very it fills your life with joy to be to like 20 years later to say, I worked really hard, but I didn't just do it for an income. I did it and I actually had impact in others. And I feel like that's sort of my calling right now. I do it now through my students who are coming to Harvard to get an education to change schools and change the world. And so I'm hoping that I can help them find their way too.
I think that's a great mission. What you're doing, Amelia, you're doing a fantastic job. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
I had many teachers from high school and beyond, but I would say the person who has probably had the most impact in my own career has been my own Harvard Graduate School of Education advisor, Richard Murnane, who very early on accepted me as a student and guided me through studying economics of education, but also more importantly, has become a really dear friend. I see him as a friend, not just of myself, but my children and my husband. And I'm a friend of his wife and his children as well. So he's someone who has guided me both professionally, but as well as in sort of some of the difficult times that we all face throughout our lives. It's a real gem of a person, both intellectually and as a human being. So I'm hoping to emulate him as I am
And,
now a professor there too.
and that is so amazing. You got great support right there. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
I would say to anybody, get really good problem solving skills, whether it's analyzing written information or data or quantitative information, because we are thrown so much data and information through so many channels. So we have to be able to sort it through and make sense of it. And then, be able to communicate effectively in writing and also in orally. The more you can communicate effectively complex issues, the more you can persuade people to do the things that you think are right. And I would say finally, the world is a complex place and we all come at it from different perspectives. And I think that's what enriches our ability to solve problems, is to see them from different vantage points. And so being able to work with others who are from different parts of the world, from different parts of the US, who come from different backgrounds, that is also, I think, a quality that is increasingly valued and that really does help you make a difference. I would say those three are, to me, at the top of the list of what makes someone effective in international development, but I think effectively in any career, but also someone that you'd want to hire. I've been in the hiring side, and I always told my teams, I'm looking for knowledge and skill, but I'm also looking for someone who we want to work with. We have a lot of people in our families that we were just born into, and we may or may not like them, or we put up with them. Your crazy uncle or aunt. We love them dearly, but we have. But we don't want to bring those for free if we have a choice, right? So
Right,
I would say,
exactly. Unless you're Duck Dynasty and get away with it. So
exactly. So it's very important to be someone who people want to be around. You want to brighten other people's lives and be, have yours be and be better because of the people you're around with.
and that makes a big difference as well. We're with the amazing author Emiliana Vegas of Let's Change the World, How to Work Within International Development Organizations, Make a Difference on the Mike Wagner Show. Emiliana, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a lot. Looking forward to having you again soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Laugh at me back. We wish all the best. And what's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your book?
Thank you. So my website is www.emiliana, Emiliana, Vegas, Vegas.com. And there you can have all the information about the book, about where to get it, about events where I'm going or have been in person, and also some presentations I've made and conversations with great people like you, Mike, in the media. So
Oh, well, thank you
thank you
very
for
much.
that.
That's greatly appreciated. And the website, once again?
EmilianaVegas.com. So my
We will,
first and second name, one word.com.
We will certainly check that out. Once again, Emiliana, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Looking forward to having you again soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Love to have you back. We wish you all the best. Emiliana, you definitely have a great future ahead of you.
Thank you so much, Mike. Have a great rest of your day.